My name is Emily. I was 34 years old when I realized my own wedding had never been meant to celebrate my happiness. It was carefully planned to destroy my future. And the cruelest part was that everyone I loved had known the truth except me. I found out exactly 58 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, not the night before, not weeks earlier. 1 hour, just enough time to watch everything I believed about my family collapse. I still remember standing in the bridal suite with one shoe on and my veil lying across the chair. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. At first, I almost ignored it. Then I opened it. Attached was a photo of a bank transfer. Another followed. Then screenshots of messages. One sentence froze the blood in my veins. Your wedding is the only chance we have to make Emily sign everything. I stared at the screen. The room suddenly felt too small, too quiet, too perfect. Outside, I could hear guests laughing. Someone tested the microphone. Glasses clinked together. My father was probably greeting relatives. My mother was likely telling everyone how proud she was. I couldn't breathe. Someone had forged a version of the prenuptial agreement. Someone wanted my signature. Someone expected me to sign away the company my grandmother had left me. And according to those messages, my parents knew. My older brother knew. Even my fiancé was part of the plan. I wanted to believe the screenshots were fake. I wanted one simple explanation. Instead, another message arrived. Do not sign anything today. Trust no one. My hands started shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. Every memory from the past year suddenly felt different. Every family dinner, every strange conversation, every time someone insisted I should stop worrying and just enjoy the wedding. None of it had been innocent. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back no longer looked like a bride. She looked like the last person in the room to discover the truth. Before we continue, I have one small favor to ask. If you enjoy emotional family stories like this, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in her place? I'm curious to read your thoughts. Someone knocked gently on the bridal suite door. Then I heard my mother's voice. Emily, sweetheart. It's time. I looked down at the phone. One final file had just arrived. It was an audio recording. And when I pressed play, I heard my father's voice say something that made me realize canceling the wedding would be the smallest decision I would have to make. The recording lasted less than 3 minutes. It changed everything. My father's calm voice filled the room. Emily has always trusted us. She won't read the documents. She never does. Another voice answered. My fiancé, Daniel. Good. Once we're married, she signs the updated agreement after the reception. She'll think it's another insurance form. Someone laughed. My brother Ryan. About time she finally contributed something useful to this family. I couldn't move. My knees almost gave out beneath me. I had spent years believing I was loved. Instead, I had been managed, controlled, prepared. The recording continued. Mom sounded worried. What if she notices the ownership transfer? Dad answered without hesitation. She won't. Emily hates conflict. She signs whatever keeps the peace. Silence. Then Daniel spoke again. Once the company is under Ryan's control, we can slowly remove her from management. Nobody outside the family will question it. The audio ended. I stared at the wall for what felt like forever. Then another memory surfaced. 6 months earlier, Grandma Eleanor had called me into her study just weeks before she passed away. She had placed a small brass key into my hand. Keep every original document somewhere your family can never reach. I laughed back then. Grandma, why would I need to hide anything from Mom and Dad? She had looked at me with sad eyes. Sometimes the people who smile at you during dinner are already counting what they'll own after you're gone. I never understood those words. Until now. Someone knocked again. Emily, honey, your makeup artist is waiting. My mother's voice sounded warm, gentle. Exactly the same voice I had trusted my entire life. I quickly locked my phone. I forced myself to breathe. If they realized I knew the truth, everything would change. I needed answers, real answers, not panic. I opened the door. Mom smiled the second she saw me. There you are. She adjusted a loose strand of my hair and kissed my forehead. You look beautiful. For just a second, I searched her face for guilt. Nothing. She looked exactly like every loving mother in every wedding photograph. That frightened me more than the recording. How long had she been pretending? She handed me a cream-colored folder. Sweetheart. One last signature before the ceremony. Just routine paperwork from the venue. I looked down. There it was. The same logo from the screenshots. The same law firm. The folder suddenly weighed 100 pounds. I smiled. I'll sign it after the ceremony. I don't want to wrinkle my dress. For the first time all morning, my mother's expression changed. Only for a heartbeat. A tiny flicker. Then it disappeared. Actually, dear, it really should be done now. My stomach tightened. She wasn't asking. She was making sure the plan stayed on schedule. I reached for the folder, not to sign it, to read it. Mom's hand stopped me. Don't worry about the legal language. It's exactly what Daniel already approved. That sentence confirmed everything. Why would Daniel approve paperwork meant only for the venue? I gently pulled the folder toward me anyway. Mom's smile faded another fraction. Outside the room, I heard Dad calling. 5 minutes, everyone. The bride is almost ready. My family sounded excited, organized, confident. Because they still believed I was completely unaware. I looked from the folder to my mother. Then I smiled the same quiet smile I had worn my entire life, whenever someone expected me to obey. Inside my mind, something had already changed forever. For the first time in 34 years, I wasn't trying to keep the peace. I was planning my next move. And they had absolutely no idea. I excused myself under the pretense of touching up my lipstick. Instead, I locked myself inside the private restroom attached to the bridal suite. My hands were finally steady. Fear had turned into something colder. Focus. I opened the folder. The first page looked harmless. Wedding insurance, venue liability, photography permissions. Exactly the kind of documents no bride would question on her wedding day. Then I noticed something. The page numbers didn't match. 1, 2, 5, 6. Pages 3 and 4 were different paper. Inserted later. I carefully lifted the staple. My grandmother had taught me that trick years ago while organizing old business contracts. Always inspect the pages that don't belong. Those are the dangerous ones. She had been right, again. Buried between ordinary paperwork was a document titled Voluntary Transfer of Voting Rights. My heart pounded. The signature line carried my name. Another line carried Daniel's. Below it was Ryan's. According to the document, I would surrender full voting control of Ashford properties immediately after the marriage. The ownership itself would remain in my name, at least on paper, but every decision, every investment, every sale, every loan would belong to Ryan. It was brilliant and terrifying. From the outside, nothing would appear suspicious. People would still believe I owned Grandma's company. In reality, I would have no power at all. I kept reading. A second attachment made my stomach twist. If I ever challenged the agreement, I would be responsible for enormous legal fees and financial penalties. Someone had spent months preparing this. This wasn't greed. It was a blueprint. Another knock interrupted my thoughts. Emily. Daniel this time. Can I come in? His voice sounded gentle, concerned. The same voice that had comforted me after Grandma's funeral. The same voice that had promised we would build a future together. I looked at the engagement ring on my finger. Suddenly, it felt heavier than gold. I'll be out in a minute, I answered as calmly as I could. I heard him hesitate. Everything okay? Just nerves. He laughed softly. That's my girl. After today, everything will finally fall into place. The words hit differently now. Everything will finally fall into place. Not our marriage, their plan. I waited until his footsteps disappeared before taking out my phone again. The unknown number had sent one final message. Check the witnesses. Do not trust the seating chart. I frowned. The witnesses. Why would they matter? I opened the digital copy of our wedding schedule. Originally, my childhood friend Olivia was supposed to sign as my witness. Now her name had been replaced. Ryan. My own brother. I hadn't even noticed. Another last-minute family adjustment. Just like everyone had insisted. There had been dozens of those over the past 2 weeks. The florist changed. The attorney changed. The wedding coordinator changed. Even the photographer had been replaced by someone my parents recommended. None of it had seemed important. Now every change looked intentional, I called the only person I still believed might tell me the truth. Olivia answered on the second ring. Emily, I've been trying to reach you all morning. Why aren't you here? My parents said you couldn't make it because your daughter was sick. Silence. Then Olivia whispered, Emily, my daughter is at school. I've been standing outside the venue for almost an hour. Your mother told security that I wasn't invited anymore. A chill ran through my entire body. Someone had removed the one person who knew every detail of my grandmother's wishes. Someone who had been present when Grandma updated her will 2 years earlier. Emily, Olivia continued, there's something I never told you because your grandmother asked me to wait unless it became necessary. If anything ever happened around the company, she wanted you to open the sealed envelope she left with me. I still have it. I never understood why. Until today, I closed my eyes. Grandma hadn't simply feared the future. She had expected this exact moment. Before I could answer, the restroom door handle suddenly moved. Once, twice. Then a key turned in the lock from the outside. The metal clicked once, then again. Someone outside was trying to unlock the restroom. I quickly folded the documents exactly as they had been. Every page, every corner, back into the folder. I flushed the toilet without using it. Ran the faucet. Splashed cold water across my face. By the time the door opened, I looked like nothing more than a nervous bride trying not to cry before her wedding. The wedding coordinator stepped inside. There you are. Everyone's waiting. She smiled politely, but something about her eyes bothered me. They weren't looking at me. They were looking at the folder. Did you sign everything? I forced a shaky laugh. Wedding nerves. I wanted to read it first. She extended her hand. That's all right. I'll take it to the attorney. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. I handed her the folder without hesitation, because I had already done something she never expected. Every page had been scanned with my phone. Every signature page, every hidden clause, every fraudulent transfer. She thanked me and hurried away. The second she disappeared around the corner, I texted Olivia. Meet me behind the old chapel entrance. 5 minutes. Come alone. Her reply arrived instantly. I'm already there. I slipped out through a side hallway that most guests didn't even know existed. The venue had once been an old estate. Grandma loved it because of its gardens. She used to tell me every beautiful house had hidden doors. She was right again. Behind the chapel, Olivia stood beside her car, holding a large brown envelope. The moment she saw me, she hugged me so tightly I almost broke down. Emily, I knew something was wrong. Your mother wouldn't even look me in the eye. She handed me the envelope. The paper was yellow with age. Across the front, written in Grandma Eleanor's elegant handwriting, were only 7 words. For Emily. Only if your family betrays you. My chest tightened. Grandma had prepared this years ago. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside were 3 items: a handwritten letter, a USB drive, and a notarized document. I unfolded the letter first. My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, then I was right about something I prayed I was wrong about. Your parents never forgave me for leaving the company to you. They believe bloodline means entitlement. I believe character earns responsibility. They will wait, they will smile, they will pretend. Then they will try to take everything. Do not hate them, but never underestimate them. Tears blurred the ink. Olivia quietly placed a hand on my shoulder. Keep reading. The next paragraph made my heart race. 3 years ago, I transferred controlling authority into a protected trust. No ownership transfer is valid without the confirmation code stored on the enclosed drive. No attorney in the family knows this. Only you. Only now did I understand. The documents waiting for my signature could never actually give Ryan control, unless they also obtained Grandma's security authorization, which only I possessed. The fraud wasn't complete. Not yet. I looked up at Olivia. Why didn't Grandma tell me? She wanted you to live without suspicion for as long as possible. She said if she warned you too early, they'd simply change their strategy. A church bell echoed across the property. The ceremony was beginning. Guests were taking their seats. Daniel believed he was about to marry me. My parents believed I was walking toward the altar. Ryan believed he was about to inherit the company before sunset. None of them knew the game had changed. Then Olivia reached into her purse again. There's one more thing. She handed me a flash drive identical to the one Grandma had left. "This isn't Grandma's, it's mine. I copied the venue's security footage this morning. Emily. You need to see who met with your father at 6:30 today." I plugged it into my phone. The first video loaded. The timestamp matched. My father stood in the empty reception hall. Across from him was the attorney. But neither of them caught my attention. The third person did. When she stepped into the camera frame, my entire world stopped. She wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't even supposed to be alive. The woman walking beside my father wore a navy blue coat and dark sunglasses. For a second, I couldn't understand what I was seeing. Then my breath caught. It was Claire, Daniel's first fiancé, the woman everyone believed had died in a car accident 4 years earlier. I replayed the footage, again and again. There was no mistake. The same graceful walk, the same silver streak in her dark hair, the same small scar above her left eyebrow. Daniel had once shown me her photograph, while telling me how deeply her death had broken him. I remembered holding his hand as he cried. Now I watched that same woman shake hands with my father, alive, smiling, talking as though nothing had ever happened. Olivia looked at me carefully. "You recognize her." I nodded without speaking. The footage had no sound, only images, but the body language said enough. The attorney handed Claire a thick envelope. She counted something inside, probably documents. Then my father embraced her like an old friend. Not someone he had just met. Someone he had known for years. The recording ended. I felt sick. Who was she really? Why had Daniel lied about her death? How long had my parents known? None of the answers made sense. Until another memory surfaced. About 8 months earlier, Daniel had suddenly insisted we postpone choosing a honeymoon destination. He claimed international travel complicated some unresolved legal paperwork connected to his previous relationship. At the time, I hadn't questioned it. Now every excuse sounded rehearsed. Every delay suddenly mattered. Olivia interrupted my thoughts. "Emily, look at the timestamp after that meeting." I opened the next video. 6:43. Claire entered the bridal suite. She stayed inside for almost 15 minutes. Then she walked out carrying a white garment bag. My wedding dress. I frowned. Why would she touch my dress? The third clip answered that question. Inside another room, she carefully opened the garment bag. She reached into the inner pocket and removed a sealed envelope. She smiled, then placed a different envelope back inside before zipping the dress closed. My blood ran cold. She had switched something. A letter, a document, money? I had no idea. But it had been hidden inside my wedding gown. Someone had expected me to discover it later. Or perhaps never. I looked toward the chapel. The music had started. Guests were standing. The ceremony was seconds away. "Emily," Olivia said quietly, "what are you going to do?" For the first time that day, I smiled. Not because I felt happy, because I finally understood something. They believed they controlled every move, every document, every person. They had spent years preparing this day, months rehearsing every detail. But they had made one mistake. They assumed I would react exactly as I always had. By avoiding conflict, by trusting family, by staying silent. That version of Emily no longer existed. I took off my engagement ring, held it in my palm, then slipped it into my purse. Not because I was running away, because I intended to walk into that chapel with completely open eyes. I wanted every one of them to believe they had already won. Only then would they reveal everything. Olivia squeezed my hand. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Call Michael." Her expression changed immediately. "Grandma's attorney?" "Yes." "Tell him to bring every original trust document and ask him to come quietly. No speeches. No announcements. Just be here before the reception begins." She smiled for the first time. "Your grandmother would be proud of you." I straightened my veil, smoothed the front of my dress, looked once more at the woman in the mirror of Olivia's car. She still looked like a bride, but now I saw something else. Resolve. As I walked toward the chapel, every guest turned to look at me. My father smiled proudly. My mother wiped away fake tears. Ryan gave me a confident nod. Daniel stood at the altar with the same warm smile that had once made me believe I was the luckiest woman in the world. He had no idea, neither did the others. Hidden inside the lining of my wedding dress was the envelope Claire had secretly replaced. And in less than 5 minutes, I was finally going to find out why they had risked everything just to make sure it reached me. I reached the altar exactly on time. The string quartet played softly. Guests smiled. Several people dabbed at imaginary tears. To everyone else, it looked like a perfect wedding. Only I knew it was a carefully staged business transaction. Daniel took my hands. "You look incredible." His voice was steady, his smile flawless. I searched his face one last time, hoping to find even a trace of the man I had fallen in love with. I found nothing. The minister began speaking. Love, commitment, trust. The words sounded almost cruel. As he spoke, I slowly slipped my fingers into the hidden pocket sewn inside my wedding dress, exactly where Claire had reached earlier that morning. My fingertips found the envelope. It wasn't thick, only a single folded sheet. Without drawing attention, I pulled it free and hid it beneath my bouquet. No one noticed. The vows continued. My father looked proud. My mother smiled through carefully timed tears. Ryan checked his watch. He wasn't waiting for our first kiss. He was waiting for my signature. When the minister asked everyone to bow their heads for a short blessing, I unfolded the paper beneath the flowers. 3 sentences. That was all. Emily. If you are reading this during the ceremony, then Daniel still doesn't know I kept copies. He thinks he destroyed every piece of evidence. Don't let him know I contacted you. Claire. My pulse exploded. She wasn't working with them. She was warning me. There was something else folded inside, a tiny memory card. No explanation, just the card. I slipped it into the sleeve of my dress before anyone could notice. The blessing ended. Everyone lifted their heads. Daniel smiled at me again. "You okay?" I nodded. "Just emotional." He squeezed my hand. "We're almost there." Yes, we were. The minister continued. "Marriage is built on honesty, trust, shared purpose." I almost laughed. Then the chapel doors opened. Every head turned. A woman stepped inside, elegant, confident, very much alive. Claire. A wave of whispers swept through the guests. Daniel's face lost all color. He stared at her as if he'd seen a ghost, which, in a way, he had. My father stood so abruptly his chair nearly tipped over. Mom grabbed his arm. Ryan whispered something I couldn't hear. Claire ignored all of them. She walked calmly down the aisle until she stood only a few feet from us. The minister stopped speaking. Silence filled the chapel. Daniel finally found his voice. "You're supposed to be..." He stopped himself. Too late. Claire looked directly into his eyes. "Supposed to be dead?" The words echoed through the room. Gasps erupted across the chapel. Several guests looked at each other in confusion. Daniel couldn't answer. Claire slowly turned toward me. "Emily, I'm so sorry." Every instinct told me she was telling the truth. She reached into her handbag and removed a thick blue folder. "These are copies of every agreement Daniel, your parents, Ryan, and Attorney Collins prepared over the last 4 years. Every draft, every email, every hidden amendment, every payment." She placed the folder into my hands. "I never wanted you to become their next victim." The chapel became completely silent. Then another voice broke the stillness. A familiar voice, firm, authoritative. "Emily, don't sign a single document." Everyone turned again. Standing at the entrance beside Olivia was Michael Harrison, my grandmother's attorney. He wasn't alone. Behind him walked 2 forensic accountants, a representative from the family trust, and a uniformed investigator from the State Bar's Office of Attorney Regulation. Attorney Collins went completely pale. Michael walked down the aisle until he stood beside me. He looked at Daniel, then at my parents, finally at Ryan. Mrs. Eleanor Ashford anticipated this possibility years ago. Everything that has occurred today has been documented, including this morning's fraudulent legal preparations. My father stepped forward. "This is outrageous." Michael calmly removed another folder. "Actually, the outrageous part is that several people in this room appear to have participated in conspiracy to obtain corporate control through deception. The investigator stepped toward Attorney Collins. "Sir, please remain where you are." Collins's briefcase slipped from his hand onto the marble floor. Papers scattered everywhere. One page slid almost to my feet. Across the top I read the title. Post-Marriage Asset Consolidation Agreement. Exactly the document they had planned for me to sign after the reception. Daniel closed his eyes, for the first time since I'd known him. He looked like a man who finally understood the plan had completely fallen apart. Daniel didn't argue. He didn't shout. He simply looked at Claire. "Why?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. She met his gaze without hesitation. "Because I spent 4 years blaming myself for something I never did. I wasn't dead. I was hiding. Your family made sure everyone believed I disappeared after I refused to sign the same documents you prepared for Emily." The chapel erupted into whispers. Daniel shook his head. "That's not true." Claire reached into her purse and pulled out another folder. "Every email you sent me, every draft your attorney prepared, every bank transfer from Ryan. I kept everything. You thought I destroyed it. I didn't. I was waiting for the right moment." Ryan finally lost his composure. "This is insane. She's lying." Michael calmly opened the blue folder Claire had brought. "Actually, she's not." He handed copies to the investigator. "Every document has already been authenticated this morning, including metadata showing when each file was created and who edited it." Attorney Collins slowly lowered his head. The investigator turned toward him. "Mr. Collins, did you knowingly prepare documents that concealed the transfer of voting authority from the named owner?" Collins didn't answer. That silence answered the question for everyone. My father stepped toward me. "Emily, listen to me. This has become a misunderstanding. We were only trying to protect the company." I looked at him. For 34 years, I had searched his face whenever I needed reassurance. Now I saw something I had never allowed myself to notice. Calculation, every smile, every compliment, every proud speech about his daughter. All carefully measured. I spoke quietly. "When did you stop seeing me as your daughter?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Mom stepped forward instead. "Honey, please, not here. Everyone is watching." I almost smiled. That sentence summed up my entire childhood. Not what happened, not whether I was hurt, only whether people were watching. I turned toward the guests. Many looked shocked, others embarrassed. Some were quietly crying. Then I noticed several employees from Ashford Properties sitting together near the back. People who had worked beside my grandmother for decades. They weren't surprised. One elderly woman slowly nodded at me, as if she had always hoped I would finally see the truth. Michael cleared his throat. "Emily, there's one final document your grandmother instructed me to deliver only if today ever came." He handed me a sealed envelope bearing Grandma Eleanor's wax seal. I broke it carefully. Inside was a handwritten letter. "My dearest Emily, if you are reading this in front of your family, then you have already survived the hardest part, not their betrayal, your own doubt. Never confuse kindness with surrender, never mistake peace for silence, and never believe love requires you to become smaller so others can feel bigger. The company was never my greatest inheritance. You are. The courage to walk away from people who only value what they can take from you. That is your real legacy." By now the entire chapel was silent. Even strangers wiped away tears. I folded the letter, then looked directly at Daniel. "One question." He nodded slowly. "Go ahead. Did you ever love me?" He closed his eyes. For several long seconds he said nothing. When he finally answered, his voice cracked. "At first, no." My stomach tightened. He continued. "I accepted Ryan's offer because I was drowning in debt after my business failed. Your family convinced me nobody would get hurt. They said you'd still own the company, that nothing in your life would really change. Then I fell in love with you. Everything became more complicated. I wanted to tell you 100 times. But every lie required another one. I believed I could somehow fix it later." I nodded slowly, not because I forgave him, because I finally had the truth. Ryan laughed bitterly. "Don't act like a victim now. You took the money." Daniel looked at him with open disgust. "I already returned every cent 6 months ago." Ryan's face turned white. Claire spoke quietly. "I have the bank records proving it." Everyone looked at Ryan, then at my parents. My father suddenly looked years older. He whispered almost to himself, "How did this become such a disaster?" I answered before anyone else could. "It became a disaster the day you chose greed over your daughter." The investigator stepped forward. "Mr. and Mrs. Ashford. Ryan Ashford, Attorney Collins. You'll each be contacted regarding the ongoing investigation. Please don't destroy any records." Michael turned to me. "Emily, the ceremony cannot continue unless you wish it to." I slowly removed my veil, then my bouquet. Finally, I looked around the chapel one last time. Months ago, I had dreamed this room would become the place where my new life began. Instead, it became the place where my old life ended. I smiled. A real smile this time, not because my heart wasn't broken. It was, completely. But for the first time in my life, the next choice belonged entirely to me. I looked at the minister. "I'm sorry, there won't be a wedding today." He nodded respectfully and stepped aside. No one tried to stop me. Not my parents, not Ryan, not even Daniel. As I walked down the aisle alone, hundreds of eyes followed me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't embarrassed by people looking at me. I wasn't ashamed. I wasn't apologizing. I wasn't trying to make anyone comfortable. Outside the chapel, the afternoon sun felt warmer than it had all morning. I took a deep breath. Then another. Olivia caught up with me. "What now?" I smiled through tears. "Now I start living for myself." 3 months later, the investigation had uncovered far more than anyone expected. Attorney Collins voluntarily surrendered his law license before formal disciplinary proceedings were completed. Several fraudulent contracts connected to other clients were also discovered. Ryan was removed from every position he secretly held within Ashford Properties. The board voted unanimously after reviewing the evidence. My parents were never charged with a crime. There wasn't enough evidence to prove every conversation behind closed doors, but the consequences were still enormous. No one trusted them anymore. Most relatives quietly distanced themselves. Family friends stopped calling. The reputation they had spent decades building disappeared almost overnight. Daniel accepted responsibility for his role. He cooperated fully with investigators and testified against Attorney Collins. One afternoon, he asked if we could meet. I almost declined. Instead, I chose closure. We met at a small coffee shop where we had celebrated our first anniversary. Neither of us ordered dessert this time. He looked exhausted. Older, not because of time, because guilt had finally caught up with him. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly. "I know," I answered. He looked down at his hands. "I loved you. I just wasn't brave enough to choose you over the life they promised me." I nodded. That was probably true. And somehow, it hurt even more, because love without integrity isn't enough. When we stood to leave, he hesitated. "I hope one day you find someone who protects your heart instead of calculating its value." I smiled gently. "One day I will." Then I walked away, and this time, I never looked back. A week later, Claire visited my office. She carried only a small box. Inside were the letters Daniel had written to her years before. I almost refused them. She shook her head. "They're yours. Not because they matter anymore, because there should never be secrets left between people trying to heal." Before leaving, she hugged me, not as two women connected by betrayal, but as two survivors who refused to let that betrayal define the rest of their lives. Months passed. Ashford Properties changed. I promoted people based on honesty instead of family loyalty. Longtime employees finally shared stories they had been afraid to tell while my father controlled daily operations. Several admitted Grandma Eleanor had quietly protected me for years without my knowledge. One afternoon, while cleaning her old office, I found a small wooden box hidden behind a bookshelf. Inside was the brass key she had once given me. Attached was a tiny note. "You finally understand why I trusted you." I cried harder than I had at the wedding. Not because I missed the company, not because I missed the money, because I finally understood my grandmother had never measured success by wealth. She measured it by character. On what would have been my first wedding anniversary, I drove alone to her favorite lake. The water was perfectly still. I brought flowers. Not for a grave, for a bench where we used to sit together every summer. I read her last letter one more time, then folded it carefully. A little girl nearby laughed as she chased ducks across the shore. Her mother called after her. The little girl turned around immediately, without fear, without hesitation, because she trusted the voice calling her. I realized that was what I wanted most if I ever built a family of my own. Not a perfect wedding, not a perfect marriage, just a home where trust never had to be questioned, where love was never a transaction, where kindness wasn't mistaken for weakness. I slipped Grandma's brass key into my pocket. It no longer unlocked any door. Its purpose had changed. Now it reminded me of something far more valuable. Some people inherit houses. Some inherit businesses. I inherited the courage to walk away from those willing to sacrifice me for their ambition. That became the greatest gift of my life. The wedding never happened, but the life I built afterward was more honest than any promise ever spoken at an altar. And if I learned one lesson through everything that happened, it was this: the people who truly love you will never ask you to become smaller so they can feel bigger. The day I lost the family I thought I had was the same day I found the woman I was always meant to become. 1 year later, I stood in the conference room that had once terrified me, not because of the business, because my father used to sit at the head of the table, and everyone waited for his approval before speaking. Now the room felt different. People disagreed openly, ideas were debated. Decisions were explained instead of imposed. Grandma would have loved it. After the meeting, one of our newest employees stopped by my office. She couldn't have been older than 25. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." She hesitated. "Everyone says you're impossible to manipulate." "How did you learn that?" I smiled. "I wasn't born that way. I learned it the hard way." She laughed softly. "I hope I never have to." So did I. After she left, I looked toward the framed photograph on my bookshelf. Grandma Eleanor stood beside me on the day I officially joined the company. Back then, I thought she was teaching me how to run a business. Now I understood. She had been teaching me how to recognize my own worth. That evening, I locked the office and walked through the city without any destination. No security, no lawyers, no family drama, just peace. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Olivia. "Dinner at my place tonight. Everyone's waiting." I smiled. Over the past year, friends had quietly become the family I never realized I needed. People who celebrated my successes without asking what they could gain from them. People who showed up because they cared, not because they expected something in return. As I drove to Olivia's house, I passed the old wedding venue. The gardens looked just as beautiful as they had that morning. For a moment, I considered stopping. Instead, I kept driving. Some places belong to our past, not because they defeated us, because we no longer need to prove anything there. When I arrived, laughter spilled out of the open patio doors. Olivia's daughter ran toward me, Aunt Emily. "You're late," I laughed. "Only by 5 minutes." She grabbed my hand and pulled me inside. The table was already full. Good food, good people, honest conversations. Nothing extravagant, everything genuine. As I looked around, I realized something that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. I didn't miss the wedding. I didn't miss the dress. I didn't even miss the dream I thought had been stolen from me, because it had never really been my dream. It had been the dream of a woman who believed she had to earn love by saying yes. I no longer believe that. Sometimes people ask me whether I regret discovering the truth only an hour before the ceremony. My answer is always the same: no, because one painful hour saved me from a lifetime built on lies. And if my story helps even one person pause before signing a paper they haven't read, ignoring a feeling they can't explain, or trusting someone who has never truly earned that trust, then every tear I cried had a purpose. My wedding day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I finally chose myself. Looking back now, I wouldn't change that ending for anything.